everyone, and welcome. This is episode 305 of Milwaukee's Tailgate Brewers podcast, part of the MKE Tailgate Network. I am James, joined by Ryan and Paul for, I guess we'll just call this the NL Wildcard Series preview episode. So we're doing this on Sunday night. We now know the Brewers are going to be facing the Arizona Diamondbacks in the first round of the playoffs, a familiar opponent in playoff lore for the Brewers. So... yeah, I know some of us were rooting to not play the Diamondbacks, but I think I'm talking myself into that being the optimal matchup. We'll get into that in a second. But first, as always, Paul, how's your weekend been?
So, very hectic. We did fall family fun on account of it being the Packers bye this week. Not bye, the mini bye, the Thursday night long weekend game. So, of course, we went to a pumpkin patch, as one does. It is still 85 degrees, so not quite right, but I did want to give a shout out to Abbey Farms, the pumpkin patch we went to, for solving a problem that is inherent with this kind of thing, which is bees. If you've ever been to one of these, they all have like cider donuts and cider everywhere and kids drinking that. And it attracts bees en masse. And they did this great job. They have all these attractions and kid crap and whatnot. And they moved all the garbage cans to like the other side of their barn and that's where they had like the sweet stuff dispensers too. Not a bee in sight. Just excellent job. Like cured a bunch of the kids from being afraid of it. They also, it is an abbey and a farm. They make abbey style, monastery style ale there. And their beer is also excellent. So that you can get lost in a corn maze with a giant bottle of quad, and that's worth doing. So highly recommend it. It's a good way to go.
Amazing. Nobody puked. Everybody made it home fine.
Somebody, yeah, your memory is good. I think it was 2 years ago when we went there. My daughter puked on the way there. So
no.
I mean, we just assume that your children puke. Like that's
your kids are pukers. It's
happens
fine.
Quite a lot. You're right.
Yeah. Safe bet. Ryan, how's your weekend been?
Yeah, not nearly as cool as Paul's. Actually, I yesterday I did go watch the Liverpool game. Those of you who know. I'm still not over that. That was absolutely
wasn't there like a corrupt car on a VAR? Is that what happened?
It would take too long to go into. Let's just say that it was an absolute atrocity and like leave it at that. There should be an investigation, but there won't be because it's the EPL, Jake. Like So. Anyway, that was terrible. Today, we had to convene a meeting of our season ticket holder group to decide who was taking what tickets for the playoff games. So that was kind of fun. Like, got to talk to everybody and do that. But while that was kind of going on, Amy realized that her defrosting project, our chest freezer defrosting project for the day, it shorted out the freezer. So we then got to rearrange everything into the small little top freezer of our refrigerator upstairs, and we're hoping like hell that this isn't going to be a problem going forward. So we got to let it dry out. We think there's water on it. So yeah, freezer mishaps. It's humid down here. I'm sticky.
Oh no.
Yeah, bad. Like if it wasn't for the fact that things have gone so very well for the Brewers, I'd be really grumpy right now. But
How do you, as your season ticket group, split up the tickets? Do you have like a draft, or what's your methodology here?
Yeah, exactly. We do a draft for the tickets at the beginning of the year for drafting the tickets, and then we go reverse order of that for the playoffs.
Interesting.
Yeah,
okay, so what do you end up with?
So, well, we also were able to purchase actual extra tickets because of being season seat holders. We have full season seats that we split up. So I was able to purchase. I will be going to all three games as necessary. So we were able to. We also got some free tickets through Amy's work, so that worked out well. Yeah,
nice. So, also worked out for you too that all these games are 6 o'clock starts, so no day games.
That Thursday game is causing me significant agita right now because we don't know the time of it. There's too many contingencies and nobody can commit to like a 3 o'clock start. So yeah, that one is going to be a pain in the butt because it seems very unlikely. The way I read it is that if all four teams are playing, the Brewers will play at 6. If one of those games is playing, it will be us and it will be at 6. If it's 2 or 3 of the series are still going, and obviously we're one of them, we're playing at either 3 or 3:30. So it's just, yeah. McCalvey put all the contingencies up on his Twitter, so you can check McCalvey's Twitter and look through the contingencies on that if you want to know. But yeah, that Thursday one is potentially going to be a mess, which actually, on the off chance that I exhaust my entire group and nobody is able to go, check the Patreon page on, say, Wednesday night, Thursday morning, because if we do have extras, I will throw them up on there, and just to the first person who says that they want to go, we'll do it that way. So you might not even have to sit with me.
Well, that's a nice little segue. A reminder, you can become a patron at patreon.com/MKE tailgate. $2 a month guarantees you get your questions answered both here and on Reporting as Eligible. $5 a month gets you that perk plus the additional exclusive content, the Minor League Extra with Ryan and James Anderson, and Paul's Packer mini pods. And apparently, when you sign up to become a patron, you might win some playoff tickets. We'll see.
Well, the right to purchase the said playoff tickets.
Right of first refusal to purchase said playoff tickets. Yeah. Yes,
we'll do it that way.
Should be clear. Ryan's not.
Well, actually, you know what? We could just, you know what? I take that back. We'll just do it as a giveaway, and that's fine. We can make that work. We'll just do it as a giveaway. That would be weird for me to make people pay. So no, but I think it's not going to happen. We have a whole group of people here, so it's unlikely, but. If it is one of those early games, especially, keep an eye out.
For our patron for a 1% chance of getting these tickets for free.
It could happen.
I was going to say, for the price of $202, you can get a playoff ticket plus question priority. Patreon.com/MKE tailgate. All right. Even if you're not a patron or not interested in playoff tickets, you can support us another way. Go to Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever else you're listening to this right now. Hit subscribe. Give us a 5-star review. Also look for us on YouTube at MKE Tailgate.
And also there is a new Minor League Extra up. James and I last week wrapped up the minor league season and handed out some hardware, well, metaphorical hardware, I suppose. And so we talked about who the best seasons were and really just gloried in what I think I called on this podcast last week. This is a 90th percentile outcome for a minor league season. Basically everything that could go right did go right for them. So it was a pretty good season all around for the minor league system.
You were pretty stoked about the year, yeah. So definitely go check that out as well. All right, so let's talk about the playoff series. As prep for this podcast, I actually prepared for this one. We went back. I listened to our season preview episode before the season started, obviously, as part of our, we did the hitting and the pitching and then sort of the catch-all episode. So in that one, we kind of talked about, what would be considered a successful season. It's a question that a lot of people kind of ask at the start of the year. And I think we all kind of landed on, get to the playoffs and then win a playoff series was kind of the thing that we landed on, right? Because as we mentioned last week, 5 of 6 years, Brewers went to the playoffs, but they've only won 2 series in the last 8 years or so. So, frustration starting to build. Great to get into the field. You never know what'll happen there once you're in, but obviously easy to get a little bit dejected when you don't actually win a series. So I guess that leads us to our first Patreon question of the week. It was one I was going to ask anyway, but I'll let Lucas Stoller phrase it. So the question here on Patreon is, what's a reasonable expectation for playoff success? Would elimination in the first round be a, quote, failure? Or does the randomness of a 3-game series mean we shouldn't expect anything and just hope for good luck? So, Paul, I guess, what are your feelings on that? What would it take for the Brewers to do in October for this year to be a success?
So everything Lucas said is correct, but it is still a failure if you don't get out of the first round. You got to get out of the first round. And yeah, you can't, there's only so much you can control. That's absolutely true. But this is what baseball is. You can revel in their regular season success. You can put up your own banner about winning the National League Central. All fine if you want to do that. But we're here for the playoffs, and getting knocked out immediately by a team that you are theoretically better than is not good, So yeah, let's get this. We have 3 awesome starting pitchers. We've been able to rest. Let's get this done here. You got to win this one. You're set up for it. If you fail at this, there's some choking and bad stuff that happened to you.
Choking is strong, right?
It is not. It means that Freddie went out and shat the bed. That's what it means.
Well, no, I mean, it could be that you have 2 close games and things just break the wrong way. And I mean, they could get knocked out in the first 2 and Freddie didn't even pitch. There's a lot of different ways that this can go. it's 2 baseball games or 3 baseball games. Like potentially, like they could lose in as many as 2. I cannot. I cannot like put that much importance on it. I know the way people, and the way I was responding to the question, I think was like, well, what is it going to take for people to consider it a successful season? I think from the fan perspective, it's going to be like they needed to win a playoff series for people to like not be angry, I guess. I don't even know. Like, I assume people will be angry no matter what. Like that's just how it goes, unless you win it all. And then I don't know. There will just need to be a new place for anger to go. I'm not even sure, but like, I think that it's baseball and it's so random, and over 2 to 3 games, anything can happen. So I mean, I think they are in a good position. I think they, we do have the Hex of Nightingale. Did you see that? He put the evil eye on us.
Yeah, that was no good.
Well, I mean, like that was no good on like every level too. Yep. Like, I don't know if you actually clicked on it and read it.
Oh, I didn't. I just saw that it was like, hey, have you heard of this team? Well, they're really good.
He mentioned Rusty Station Wagons in Milwaukee.
Thanks, jerk. Exactly. Yeah.
No, he literally talked about Rusty Station Wagons and pickup trucks. So apparently, yes, we're poor and or rural here in Milwaukee. So yeah, Bob really, if he thought he was going to win over Brewer fans with that pick, one, everybody knows about the Curse of Nightingale, so he's not getting any credit for that, and also just because like he like flagrantly insulted the city in the first paragraph. So thanks, Bob, but no. Anyways, yeah, it's just I just can't read that much into the postseason in terms of what team quality is and like what the team is, because it's too random. But obviously, like you want to eventually, the point of doing this is you get in enough times, hopefully eventually you get hot and you can go ahead and win one of these things. That is the hope. That's what they're trying to do here. That's what everybody wants. But where it gets prickly for me is when you start calling things failures. Like I can't.
All right, well, they'll get their chance to win another playoff series against one of the teams they've actually won a playoff series against in the Mark Atanasio area, the Arizona Diamondbacks. So I guess let's just start top line. How do you guys feel about the matchup? Who has the upper hand, whether it's in offense or pitching? I know I kind of had a tweet thread on this as I was just skimming through some of the top line numbers, but Paul, let's start with you. Feelings on the matchup. I know you kind of didn't want to face the D-backs when we asked this last week, but
very true.
What do you think about this series matchup?
It's not bad. I do think the Brewers are objectively better than the Diamondbacks. They're not juggernauts. They're actually a little Brewersy in my opinion. If you run into Zach Gallen when he's hot, he can just win you a game by himself. So that's no good. The Diamondbacks also did win the season series against the Brewers, but there is a little fool's gold in there. Like they beat Jansen Junk in a start, which I don't think counts. Like who cares about that? They did get to Burnsy once and lit him up pretty good. I think they actually got to him twice, but lit him up once really good. And they faced like Colin Ray and beat him. Like so again, like I don't think they played against Peralta or Woodruff a single time, if memory serves off of my looking it up earlier. I think it was just Miley, Ray, Junk, Burns twice, and somebody else. So like we don't even have a good sample of how that will work against actual good pitching either. There are teams I'd rather face than them, but they're just a meh playoff team. All playoff teams are good. You made the playoffs. Congratulations. And they are one of the lesser ones. So I feel pretty good about the matchup. I think they should be okay in this one. I think they should be able to shut them down. And even when you do get Gallen, I think that you can at least make it like a rock fight that you might win. So I think they're in pretty good shape.
Yeah, more on the Gallen thing. So he did shut them down, but it's important to note that first game, that was one of the worst umpired games of the year. And he got what was it? The Diamondbacks won that game by a run, and he got like 2 runs almost worth of margin, according to umpire scorecards. That was
something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. It was a truly, truly shambolic game.
He beat Miley 3-0. That was one of his.
Okay.
I'll see if I can find the other one, but they were all close with Gallen, I think.
Yeah. Another guy who's not going to pitch in this series, and Wade Miley. Well, probably. Yeah. We'll get to that. But yeah, Gallen also he got off to a very hot start this year and looked really good early on. But if you look at his numbers split by half of season, he had a 3.04 ERA in the first half and a 4.03 ERA in the second half.
Gallen's other matchup was against Teheran.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
So,
yeah, there you go.
And they won 5-1, but I mean, it was Teheran. So again, who cares?
Sure. Yeah. Again, a guy, sir, who will not be appearing in the film, right? So
yeah.
Yeah. So like Gallen was a better pitcher in the first half than he was the second half. I know this because I had him on multiple fantasy teams, and so I get to live with that through the second half of his regression. So he is good. He is going to be like a top 5 Cy Young finisher this year, but he was better in the first half when we saw him than he was in the second half when we didn't see him. So that is something to bear in mind here, and something that kind of works, I think, in their favor a little bit. You also, in this one, have the favorable situation where Arizona's offense for the year was better than the Brewers. If you look up at the rankings here, Arizona's offense, they were a 99 OPS plus team throughout coming into today anyway. I don't know if these changed today, but they were a 99 OPS plus team, and the Brewers were a 92 OPS plus team throughout the season. So they were basically an average offense, and the Brewers over the course of the season were, solidly below average. Yeah, they were below average. But if you look at where they've been over the last 2 months since the trade deadline shook up the rosters and the Brewers, got better, you can look at it, and the Brewers ended up at and this is WRC plus. I went over to Fangraphs for this one, just because those were the windows I happened to have open here when I was doing it. But the Brewers had a 101 WRC plus since the trade deadline, and the Diamondbacks are down at 88. So the Diamondbacks offense over the last couple months wasn't all that good, and the Brewers was considerably better. So the Brewers definitely offensively are on an upswing, whereas the Diamondbacks not on an upswing. But how much does that matter? I don't know. Probably not a whole lot.
Probably
but
not at all. But
it
better than nothing.
Right, it's better than nothing. And also it is worth mentioning because in the Brewers' case, at least, they did significantly change the composition of their lineup, right? Like their lineup was different over the last 2 months than it was during the early months in numerous ways, not just the additions of Canna and Carlos Santana, but also just like different guys playing different roles, different things going on as far as all that went. Like Sal Frelick is present at the end of the season, whereas he wasn't at the beginning. So all of these things also bear on the call for, I'm matchup wise, I think the Brewers should be favored. I haven't looked at what Vegas says, but I would think they would be favored in the series, especially it's at home. And they have, they have a third starting pitcher. I don't know who would the Diamondbacks even start in a game 3? Are we talking about Brandon Pfaadt here?
Maybe. Is Merrill Kelly lined up for game 1? I forget.
No, it'll be Gallen in game
1.
Yeah, I think.
I did forget to kind of look up to see, but you imagine you're going to see Merrill Kelly as one of the other games, and then
absolutely.
That's the issue.
After that it gets
a bullpen game, and then Arizona's bullpen also, notably, at least when you look at DRA, the worst, I guess, qualified in the postseason bullpen among all the NL teams. So another big clear advantage for the Brewers there. Obviously, the Brewers ended up very, very good in one-run games, 29-18 in one-run games. The Diamondbacks were at 500 this year at 21-21. So
start the campaign to bring back Zach Davies for the third start.
Ooh, oh yeah, that'd be fun.
So
I'm not sure he's on the team right now, actually, but he was.
If things carry over the way they've been going, I think the Brewers are at a significant advantage in this series. But you just don't know if that's going to be the case.
Yep. Also worth noting, Corbin Carroll got quite a bit worse over the course of the season. He started off like gangbusters. Don't get me wrong, he was still quite good in the second half, but it's the difference between like a 900 OPS and like a low 800 OPS. And he got much, much worse in his platoon splits. You started to be able to get him out with lefties. The league figured him out a little bit. And if you don't get yourself trapped in a situation where he's facing some slow junk toss and righty, you can actually handle him halfway decently. So that helps a lot too. He's their best offensive player, and a phenomenal player as well. And I think he's, if not figured out, at least someone you can control with a good bullpen.
For sure. All right. So obviously the Brewers have some roster decisions to make ahead of the first playoff series. And, this is a little bit different because it's only a maximum of 3 games, right? So that's going to affect who they carry on the roster and, what their roles are going to be. It's conceivable maybe that we don't see quite as many pitchers or what have you. So I guess let's start there, Ryan, with 26 spots. How many pitchers, how many hitters, and who do you think is going to be making the cut here?
Yeah, so it seems weird that they would carry more than like 11 or 12 pitchers, right? Like, I can't imagine them wanting to pitch more than those guys unless, like, a situation where, like, let's say in game 1, like, the worst happens and Burns gets torched and they just want to, like, run out, somebody to eat those innings.
Right.
Like, I don't know that would, or I guess it could be in game 1 or game 2 in that situation, but it seems unlikely. But then again, I don't think that they have position players that you necessarily feel like, oh, this guy could really like do something well. So let's take a look at this. I think there's 20 locks here. And so on the position player side, I think there's 11 guys pretty much locked in here. I would bet the ranch on these guys being in there. Contreras, Caratini for the catchers, Santana at first, Turang, Monasterio, and Adames in the middle infield, Josh Donaldson at third, Yelich, Taylor, Frelick, and Canna. I think you could basically, I think it's almost a lock to say Rowdy is going to make it, like as a pinch hitter, somebody who can come in off the bench that way. I think
so too.
Yeah, I think it's
not sure I would do that, but I agree with you.
Well, I mean, like it comes down to like who do you like more than him, and then we'll get into the list there. But like so, and then on the pitching side, I don't think they carry Miley because Miley is probably their game 1 starter of the NLDS. And so I think they would hold him back for that and not have him pitch out of the bullpen under really any circumstances. But maybe they decide, hey, if we need an emergency guy, there is the possibility that this goes to a bunch of extra innings. So maybe they decide, hey, we're going to put Wade Miley on here. We're planning to start him in game 1 of the DS if we get there. But in the event of, a 14, 15, 16 inning game, maybe we need to cover for that. And that's probably the biggest reason to like carry more pitchers than you would really need is just the idea of potentially going deep. Because remember, no Manfred Man in the postseason. There's no zombie runner. So it's just,
it goes and goes.
But I mean, lock-wise, Burns, Woodruff, Freddie, Williams, Piamps, Uribe, Milner, McGill, Wilson, Peguero, if he's healthy, he's eligible to come off the IL, and that really sounded like was a little game they were playing there with that, the elbow efflusion or whatever that was, right?
Yes.
Elbow swelling is what it was, yeah.
And then Adrian Hauser is a questionable one here because he did pitch on Sunday.
Right.
So I think there's a pretty good chance that Adrian Hauser gets put on there just, in the case of needing like, let's say you get into a game 3 and you need somebody to go extras, like Adrian Hauser could potentially be that guy. And then I think, as far as position players go, like, I mean, that leaves basically, if we assume Peguero and Hauser are on the roster, which I think is pretty safe, that's 22 spots. And I guess my guesses at this point would probably be Rowdy, Perkins, Mitchell, and then Colin Ray, maybe
that's
as
mine.
An inning eater. You think that's the?
You just nailed my exact ones. Yes, I think that's right. I think you have Ray there to eat something if it goes wrong. You want Mitchell just because of speed, defense, and in case he happens to catch fire like he did to start the season. Perkins is also a versatile, great defensive player, and there's not another bat that's better than him. And I think Hauser I'm a little unsure of too, but I think he'll make it and can also eat one if you need somebody to eat one. But I think that's it. And like everybody else that could possibly make it is pretty uninspiring, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, there are some potential things here. So James did point out when we were meeting beforehand here that the Diamondbacks are pretty good at hitting lefties. So they're a better lefty hitting team than they are against righties, which makes sense when you look at who some of their best hitters are. So that's not shocking. But that probably, man, they think more of Andrew Chafin than anybody in the world does. And they kept giving him like high leverage chances way after any fan or anybody would have. So I can't.
If they put him on the roster, people will riot. I mean,
I know
it doesn't matter. He's not actually going to pitch if things are.
They've given him enough rope, and he went and hung himself. This is over.
I mean, I'm just saying.
He's had like 7 scoreless innings recently, so I don't know. But
he also he had a lot of walks and was putting people on, and then was wriggling out of it. I mean, it
wasn't easy.
It's been a whole thing with Andrew Chafin. Anybody who listens to this knows, but like, I don't know. They've seemingly decided and stuck with him, and Craig has done a decent job of like using him to get the last out against a lefty in an inning, and then being able to take him out of the game. So depending, they might put him on the roster basically just to like go face a lefty and get a lefty out. So I don't know, but like, we're looking at some of the other possibilities here. Like, are you that excited about Owen Miller or Colin Ray for that matter? Like, none of these things are particularly inspiring picks. And
be clear, I'm more excited about Colin Ray than I am Owen Miller.
you are a noted Colin Ray non-excited person. So
I'm more excited than I am about Owen. I'm not excited about Owen at all.
Right. No, I'm just saying, like, you are not.
Oh, I get it.
Yeah. You're definitely not like a person who's excited about Colin Ray. So.
Certainly not.
Yeah. He has been a good guy for this team. Like he gave them a lot of important innings this year, and I think he's going to end up. Isn't it like he's going to end up with like second on the team in innings pitched? Let me double check that real quick.
Right?
No, he's going to end up. He ended up third on the team in innings pitched behind Burns and Freddie.
Freddie, yeah.
Like he's ahead of Wade Miley in terms of innings pitched. He's ahead of Adrian Hauser in terms of innings pitched. So yeah, like he was a critical piece to them keeping it together and winning a number of games that otherwise using your 7th or 8th or whatever starter. Teams usually lose those games, and they won a lot of those games because he was. What did we say? He was like extremely uninspiringly competent. Uninspiringly competent.
Yeah, that's going to be a wild one to look back on this year's BREF page like 5 years from now. Like Colin Ray was
Colin Ray. Yeah.
He pitched the 3rd most innings on the 2023 Brewers. Who knew? All right, we have some other questions about roster construction here. So let's go to Bill Rabe, who's asking a couple of either-ors here. So at least I'm assuming it's a situation where he's asking either this person or this person if you had to make the call. So first of all, Paul, if you had to choose between one, Rowdy Tellez or Garrett Mitchell on the Wildcard roster?
I think Mitchell. Mitchell is let's above anything else. If they're both bad, Mitchell's still useful. Mitchell is fast. Mitchell can play defense. Rowdy brings nothing to the table if that bat ain't working. And there's an entire possibility that Mitchell's bat's better anyway. It's not a sure thing by any stretch. If you had to bet between the two of them, you'd bet on Rowdy. But Mitchell showed enough early to at least give some inclination that there's over especially a short period of time, he can hit better than Rowdy does. So that's an easy question. You go with Mitchell over Rowdy. If it's just picking between the two, it won't be. But you do that easily. No problem. No question about it.
Yeah, I mean, I think both of them make the roster. So I think that's going to happen. So, but I mean, if you're picking between one of them, Mitchell is just difficult because we have so little sample. I will say he did hit some balls hard over the weekend. He had multiple balls that came off his bat at over 100 miles an hour in those starts over the weekend. I think in Thursday, Friday, Saturday was when he was playing. So he actually did hit a couple balls hard, including a double that I thought had a chance to go out, and I was going to, absolutely lose it if that happened, because that was I had said that there's like, you're basically having, if he's on the roster, it's just to pinch run and to play defense. And so, of course, immediately he like takes in his first game back, he takes 2 walks and hits a double. So what the hell? The other one, I think, again, both of them I think are on the roster. I think Perkins and McGill both make it. But if I had to choose between them, I think there's far more utility in McGill, and I think McGill might actually be pitching some high leverage innings.
Agreed. With you on that.
Yeah.
Too.
So I think, again, I don't think we actually have to choose between these guys. I think all 4 of these guys are on the roster. If I had my way.
Moving on, Jay Google asking, how might the NL wildcard round roster be different from the NLDS roster if they make it that far? So, Ryan, let's start with you. Obviously, longer series, some other considerations to make there. I guess who would maybe be on the wildcard roster that might be in question for the NLDS?
Yeah, the big change is going to be that you're going to have Wade Miley on because we're assuming he's not on the roster here, which that might be wrong, but Wade Miley would be probably the biggest change, and you'd probably pitch whoever, or you'd remove from the roster whoever had just like if Adrian Hauser had just gone like 4 innings, well, okay, and you're looking for a person to get off the roster, you'd probably do that. So it would just sort of depend on situationally, or if somebody looks really bad and just or gets hurt, those things also happen. But I think that's the main one, is the Wade Miley difference. And also it seems more likely that like Andrew Chafin could be on the DS roster then.
I was going to say that too. I think given the longer series, there's a much higher chance they swap out another pitching spot for a hitting spot. And maybe like Blake Perkins is swapped out for Chafin in that situation. I could see that happening. I'm not sure it would be my cup of tea, but they like to be able to run that bullpen as deep as possible. And the longer the series, the more they're going to, I think, bring pitching on at the expense of hitting.
Yeah, they'll have to, especially if they're running like an 11. I think it's probably going to be 12 and 14 in that first round. That seems most likely, but we'll just have to wait and see.
Yeah, I just really hope we get another Craig Counsell, Dave Roberts pissing match in the playoffs before Craig leaves for New York. That'd be a great way to go out. It's more pitching shenanigans in the NLDS against the Dodgers. I would love that. All right, Jason Spitz, our next question this week, asking, do the Brewers have sole discretion to keep the roof open during the playoffs? If yes, and because the team is pitching-centric, assuming they advance to play the likes of the Dodgers and Braves, why wouldn't they keep it open and make it tougher on hitters as it gets colder outside? So, Ryan, you want to take this one?
Well, no, I'll throw it to you because you looked it up while we were in pre-show. So
James,
you go ahead and
work.
Answer it for us. Yeah, you're the reporter here. You report.
Well, sources close to my Google machine report that in the playoffs, the commissioner's office has the final say on any and all roof decisions. The commissioner will confer with the home team and the crew chief for that series, but ultimately it's the commissioner's call. And as we were talking, we're kind of struggling to remember exactly how many Brewers playoff games the roof has actually been open for. And, just thinking logically, it would make sense, right, that the commissioner's office kind of wants to level the playing field in the postseason, all things considered. So, Paul, they're probably going to be playing in a dome, right?
They probably are. We couldn't come up with Ryan remembered or seemed to remember at least one outdoor playoff game. I don't remember any. I've been to plenty myself, and I think that they do. It's a more controlled environment. It's less prone to swing one way or the other for people, and I feel like their strong preference is just for it to be closed, absent an absolutely beautiful day. So I think that's what we can expect at this time of year in Milwaukee.
Well, and also the fact that these are night games. If it's the afternoon, you might see a decision swing the other way. But I would imagine that we're going to be dealing with closed roofs. It's not supposed to be super warm once we get to Tuesday in Milwaukee, I don't believe. So the temperatures are supposed to be dropping throughout the week. So I think, we're probably playing under the dome. And, that's fine. Like, if you want a playoff atmosphere and noise, if you've ever been to a playoff game at that place with the roof closed, it gets loud in there. It gets real, real loud. So, that would be another reason for Milwaukee to want to do it. But I think, this is largely going to be out of their hands, and they won't get to dictate much here.
Next question comes from Price Trozen, who is asking, in the loss to the Cubs on Saturday, I think the Brewers had some fantastic practice in big moment plays, like the going home throw from Donaldson. Do you think, like I do, that they were practicing big moment plays and it was basically an exhibition game? I'm excited for the team. So obviously Saturday is the only one that they lost to the Cubs, but it didn't matter because the Cubs were basically eliminated from playoff contention mid-game. So yeah, Paul, glorified exhibition this weekend?
Pretty much, yes. After things all get settled, it just becomes a contest of, practice, don't get hurt, and don't put strain on guys who don't need strain. And yeah, I mean, yes, they're all professionals. Yes, they're out there trying to win, but they're really just working on stuff at that point. Once there's nothing else to play for, like, that's what it turns into. That's what it should turn into. And I think that's, tongue in cheek, yes, but also true. That's essentially what did happen.
Yeah, I mean, after they had absolutely nothing left to play for, what did they win? 4 of 5?
Yeah, play loose.
Yeah, like they lost that game to the Cubs on Saturday, and I guess did they lose the hungover game day? I think they might have. I can't even remember.
I think they did.
The Wednesday game.
Yeah, they lost 2-3 in Miami. Yeah.
No, to the Cardinals.
Oh, to the Cardinals. Yeah.
Yeah, the Miami one. They lost 2 of 3 the weekend before. Yeah.
Sure. Doesn't matter. Who cares? Yep. Moving on.
Exactly.
My Only Lemonade asking, it seems like Victor Caratini has been operating as Corbin Burns' personal catcher all year. That's something we kind of noted a couple of times. Do you think that this will continue into the playoffs, and should it? But Ryan, you're the one that looked into this one. What did we find that might be a little bit surprising?
Yeah, well, if you've been paying attention and been watching, the last 3 times that Corbin Burns has started, it was William Contreras behind the plate. In fact, in his second to last start, the one where Burns went 5 innings, they actually had Contreras start the game and then swapped him out for Caratini. So they actually, Caratini finished that game. And in those games, just to look at what Corbin Burns has done in those games, those 3 games, he's pitched a total of 14 2/3 innings and has allowed 4 earned runs. So
not bad.
Yeah, and those all came in that third to last start. The game against Washington, that they ended up winning 9-5. That one that was the Marcana Grand Slam game. So
yes, right.
That one, and yeah. So I think it's probably. I would anticipate they would probably try to go with Contreras because that allows you to get a better bat than Victor Caratini down in the bottom of the lineup somewhere. It allows you to play somebody who's better than that. But I guess I won't be shocked either direction they decide to go on this one. I think they can kind of do whatever. You can count on Contreras being in the lineup either way, though. So if not, he'll be the DH if he's not starting.
Yeah.
All right, Bob Peterson, another question about the weekend series against the Cubs, asking, what do you read into the performances of the Brewer relief pitchers on Saturday nights? Actually, I feel optimistic about the bullpen in the playoffs because of Craig Counsell's management of it. Could it have stacked up any better? So yeah, even though Brewers trailing big in what was probably Eric Bauer's last appearance as at least a Brewer, if not a major league pitcher, still ran out the A bullpen in a blowout loss. But obviously saying they needed to get that work in before Tuesday. So Paul, are you cool with that? And how do you feel about bullpen?
It's totally fine. Guys had to stay on schedule, and I'm sure they told everybody, don't overextend, don't hurt yourself, don't worry about getting through this one with your A stuff. And some guys, I think, do have trouble controlling that when you tell them that, but I doubt anybody did in this game. I think this was your throw day. This was practice. Everybody understands that. Totally fine. You don't want guys to go too long without pitching. That's not good for you either. You want to keep your rhythm. You want to keep your routine down as much as possible. And I think that's exactly what this was. So totally fine. It's not going to put any undue strain on anybody. It's a completely fine exercise to do.
Yeah, the reason he's giving that winking emoji there was I wrote on Saturday night, I will not read anything into the Brewers bullpen usage. I will not read or into the results actually of what happened in that. And yeah, I think this is a classic situation. Don't read anything into it because you're talking about guys who normally pitch with close leads and are pitching with an edge and are trying to keep, runs off the board that way. This was a game where the prime mandate was get your work in and don't get hurt. So I think
spring training, right? Yeah.
Yeah. And like Abner Uribe got himself into a little bit of trouble there. He got the bases loaded with either one out or no outs, and ended up giving up just one run. So that could have gone a lot worse. And Uribe is prone to those things. Hopefully people were joking, hopefully got it out of his system, and that's all done and good and taken care of. I also think McGill gave up a run in that run, but it was interesting to see who they went to in that sequence, because I think it is something of a preview of at least what they're thinking here, because they went McGill to Uribe to Milner in the 7th to Piamps to Williams. So interesting on that front. I don't know, like Milner for this series probably is more of a like try to get one out at the end of an inning sort of guy, but we'll see how that all stacks out. But yeah, this is really what you want to see. This is what you hope for, is that you can set up your bullpen and you can set up your rotation and that you can give the manager like exactly the setup he wants. They had lots of time to be able to do this because they took care of things so early. And I mean, we talked about this. They've been taking the gas off well before they officially clinched the division. They've been taking the gas off for a couple weeks now.
Yep.
So yeah.
Still winning though, which is good to see. The cheese to Wilson Contreras' wine. Speaking of whining, the question this week, what's the bigger eye roll moment? Cubs announcers getting annoyed at the Braves taking a moment to celebrate history in the making with Acuna, or Cubs fans getting mad that the Brewers played the blooper reel with Suzuki's blunder against the Braves? So lot of sore Cubs fans this weekend, Paul.
Yes, there was. I will say I'll go to bat for him a little bit on the first one. I actually don't appreciate in-game ceremonies for things. I think it's a bad idea. It does impact the flow of play. I don't care what it is. And also, not that this was possible here necessarily, although not totally impossible. Sometimes official scorers change things after the fact, and your ceremony might be stupid. There was a in the 80s in the NFL, I forget which running back it was, but there was a running back who was like the first to go over 1,000 yards for the season, and they handed out an award live in game for it and stopped the game for it. And then he lost 3 yards on his next carry, and then he became the first running back to go over 1,000 yards again on the subsequent carry. So you gotta account for those things. But awards are for later. Just do that. Like, stop that. So I kind of get that one. It is annoying and fine accomplishment, but whatever. The other one though, sorry, if you do it on the field, it's fair game to put on the highlight reel. That's just play better, do better, and don't whine about that. So the other one is just whiny.
Yeah, pure whining. And I got to listen to some serious whining on Friday night from a couple of Cubs fans who were in their early 20s sitting behind me. One of them I put on Twitter. I could have put a lot more on there, but the one about Damian Lillard being one of the worst perimeter defenders in the NBA, right as they said that right after the Marlins went ahead of the Pirates and made their elimination that much more likely. And it wasn't like in context of anything other than just like one looked to the other one and said, yeah, Damian Lillard's a really bad defender. So the cope was off the charts on that one.
Whatever you need to tell yourself, guys.
And in reference to what you were talking about, the whole thing about like running totals, and I'm not sure. So it must be his Fangraphs WAR, not his it must be the Fangraphs WAR. Albert Pujols at one point was over 100 WAR for his career.
Oh, right.
And then he dipped below it. It must be on Fangraphs because it looks like he's only in the 80s for Baseball Reference. But then his final good year pushed him back over it. So he was over 100 WAR, then he was under 100 WAR, then he went back over 100 WAR because Albert Pujols late in his career, except for that weird run with the Cardinals at the very end there, he was a negative WAR player for a while there, so he was actually taking away from his career accomplishment. So, yeah,
I remember that being the running tracker on Effectively Wild and a couple other places. They're like, oh, he's still slipping. Oh, he's under it, and then magical final season got him over the top. Lucroy Suitcase, asking about another moment over the weekend. Where would you rank Caleb Bosley in terms of Wisconsin-born players for the Brewers? I already would put him ahead of Owen Miller just for destroying Cubs fans' hopes and dreams. So definitely a great story, right? Kind of career minor leaguer from D3 UW Lacrosse, originally from, I think, the Hortonville area. So, Wisconsin-born kid, not that many guys that, stayed in school in Wisconsin and ended up for the Brewers. I think Vinny Rottino is another one that went the UWL route and made it to the Brewers. So that's a nice little connection. But I guess, Paul, where does he rank among Wisconsin-born Brewers for you?
I don't know, like 5th, 6th? There's not that many of them.
Sure.
So he'll rank higher if he gets to play even a little tiny bit for another team, so he can be a 0.01% immaculate grid guy for us.
That'd be great. Yeah,
really what I'm hoping for more than anything. But it's nice to see, get a guy in there, get him some exposure, get him. He pitched well, so he's like the Citizen King of Wisconsin-born players, as they are to Wisconsin musicians. Showed up once, did nice. Not the Violent Femmes, but okay, fine.
Right. How about you?
Yeah, I mean, he will always live in lore the way that, and obviously this guy did a lot more for us, but like Seth McClung, the way that went down towards the end of the 2008 season.
Sure. Cult hero.
Yeah, they're like cult hero status, and just the way that all played out, with it being he's from Wisconsin and it's the Cubs, and he's effectively eliminating the Cubs with that performance. Yeah. I mean, that's he will be getting bought beers off that one for a long time.
Absolutely.
So, and as he should. And it's one of those things. It's a cool thing about baseball that this sort of thing can happen. And like if he never pitches again in the big leagues from here on out, he will always have that. And the fact that it was for the hometown team, for who he grew up rooting for, that's special.
Made sure the Cubs had seen better days.
Yeah, half the town was there to see him. It was electric what he was doing well. And I don't know if you guys saw, but another one of his backstories was he skipped work, I believe, to be at the Braun Grand Slam game. And there's a photograph of him cheering after the Grand Slam that also came against the Cubs. So that was a nice little full circle thing there.
Nice.
Definitely a cool story. I don't know if he's better than Damian Miller, my personal favorite, but, definitely up there in terms of Wisconsin-born players. Definitely ahead of Owen Miller.
Yeah, in terms of lacrosse area guys, it'll always be Damian Miller. So, like it will always, especially for the walk-off home run on Lacrosse Day.
Damian Miller Day.
Lacrosse area day. Exactly.
Yeah.
Super great. Yeah. Scott Service never made it to the Brewers. That's a shame. But anyway, moving on, PJ Wessels, our next question this week, asking, I won't lie, after week 1 of the Packers season, I was riding the combined high of stomping the Bears and the low of blowing the game against the Yankees. I had no reason to feel that bad about the Brewers at the time, 98+% to make the playoffs, 80+% to win the division, but the Brewers righted it better than I expected. They've gone 12-6 since then and looked better than all right doing it. Where does this possibly last Craig Timber rank in the history of Craig Timbers? Paul, what do you think?
I think probably second. So this is very successful. They were obviously great down the stretch. They put the division away. But I do think you have to get higher marks to earlier Craig Timbers for essentially just managing them to absolute flawlessness, to just squeak into the playoffs where they otherwise wouldn't have. This one, they just kind of played their normal game on the strength of added bats and good pitching, and didn't have to do too many shenanigans to grind it out, just like they just played normal baseball and did it. So maybe not a true Craig Timber in the spirit of Craig Timber, where he's sort of the primary responsible mover for it. But you got to give it credit for just overall success. Like, they blew the doors off of everybody. They won the division by leaps and bounds. They got themselves rest and set them up well for what's really important here, instead of, dragging a corpse into the playoffs and having to start some garbage pitcher on the first day of it. So very high, but not as, I think, a little bit under some of the past of eking in on the strength of the manager.
Yeah, so they went 18-11 this Craig Timber, which is a very good mark. That's very, very solid. But just narrative-wise, it doesn't live up to either 18 or 19 in my mind. 18 just because they got so hot and were able to go from, maybe a fringe playoff team at the start of the month to winning the division over the Cubs, who were the dynastic Cubs at that point. That was taking that team down and going to 163 and doing that, is just
in Chicago.
Chicago is just next level stuff. And I don't even know, that probably happened in October would be my guess. Game 163.
It was October 1st. The memory came up in my Facebook memories today. Yeah. Anyway.
Nice. And then 2019 was just so bizarre because that was a team that lost Christian Yelich and so many things elsewhere were just not right with that team. And they had to go, completely. We thought they were dead. Go back and listen to old episodes of this podcast from early September. We were convinced they were dead. And they were. That was a team that was coming into the month of September that year. It had a 5 to 10% playoff odds. They were single digits. And so to pull that off, especially losing your literal MVP in Christian Yelich, that's just next level stuff. So this is a very strong third. There's no competition for it behind it. 2021 was not a good Craig Timber, and
kind of disappointing. In 2020
we just don't even think about 2020 that never happened. So 2020 is just memory hold. And also I don't think it was particularly good. There were only 2 months to that season, so yeah.
All right, moving on, we got another Jay Google question asking, so which is more satisfying, the Cubs getting eliminated from the playoffs with 1 game to go, or St. Louis finishing in the basement of the division in Wainwright's last year? Paul, what do you think?
They're both really good. It's like ranking your children, but
so you have a favorite?
I guess the Cubs nominally because they did. My favorite thing in the world is when the Bears collapse horribly, play horribly, are bad at front office stuff, are stupid, all that good stuff. And the Cubs are kind of the same. They just are a better run organization, so it doesn't happen that often. The Bears just did this 6 hours ago.
I was gonna say even better is when they are good, and then it still comes crashing down. Yeah,
but we're not in Chicago. But the Cubs collapse was really pretty epic, all things considered. They really had to do a lot to give this away. They had just banal bad play for a long period of time. They had hilarious stuff like the Suzuki thing. They had leads in 7 consecutive walk-off innings and lost all of them, some crap like that. It was really entertaining. So I got to give it to the Cubs. The Cardinals, for legacy reasons, it's good to see them be terrible, but for pure entertainment on being bad, you can't beat this Cubs collapse. It was just really, really well done. Yeah,
I'm going to also go with the Cubs collapse, and because one of the things is the Cardinals are going to get benefits from having been bad this year. They're going to pick higher in the draft.
Yeah, they collapsed the right way.
Right. They collapsed. They collapsed in the way that organizations kind of generally eventually need to have some bad seasons to be able to reset things. It really helps clear out the roster. You do some things, you can make some trades. The Cardinals are always so much in a mode of playing for the present that they can rarely just purely look to the future. They were able to look to the future this year in a way that they're rarely afforded that opportunity, and it's going to benefit them down the road. They made some trades at the deadline here that are going to help them be a better team in the future than what they would have. I don't think they're earth-shattering. They're not going to magically transform the fate of the franchise, but I think that was helpful. One of the worst positions to be in is to be the last team to miss the playoffs, like the Brewers were last year. That just sucks, and even when you don't have some sort of narrative around it, but there's always going to be a narrative, right? Last year for the Brewers, it was they collapsed because Josh Hader, and so there was all this rancor and hostility and bad feelings. And the Cubs collapse, I think, is probably going to get at least David Ross fired, if not Jed Hoyer as well.
So you didn't see what Tom Ricketts said today?
Oh no! Oh no!
Rossi did a great job this year.
Oh boy!
Teams behind him, really great year. So they might be sticking with Ross.
So that might not be the worst thing for Brewers fans. I don't know. I don't know exactly what to think of David Ross. He's probably better than what Cubs fans think of him, which is he's their Aaron Boone, right?
He's dumb. He's dumb. Yeah, Ian Happ bats third because that's where Ian Happ bats. That kind of thing. Yeah.
I mean, yeah, but lineup order
that's okay.
Yeah, who cares? Lineup order.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I do think he's not great, but it's hard to tell,
Right. Well, especially like the clubhouse stuff and all of that. I assume he does fairly well with that.
Right.
Unlike and this, we should probably talk about this because it did come up. Somebody asked me this. If Craig Counsell does leave, and we have a question coming up about that in a moment, so we could table that for a minute. But it was brought to my attention that Gabe Kapler is now on the market.
Yes.
And that whole situation just seems bizarre to me. And actually, I was listening to a podcast last night, and Eno Saris was talking about the fact that there was maybe some rancor because if this is not a problem between Gabe Kapler and the front office, they apparently work very well hand in glove together. This sounds like it was more of like a player and Gabe Kapler issue.
Oh, Gabe Kapler did something that made a player mad at him? Oh, wow. That's amazing. I can't believe that would happen.
Yeah. Wow. So I think that maybe would be problematic for the Brewers to bring him on, even if, on paper, he seems to do a lot of things well and correct in terms of management. I think he would be a good tactical manager. I think I would be perfectly happy with him running the squad from that perspective. But he doesn't seem to have the touch on the player side of things, right? There's history there.
Yeah.
I would
look
say
on his Wikipedia page.
Some might say he does have the touch on the player side of things.
Yeah.
Careful, Paul. You're always the one talking about libel on this podcast.
Some might say that, not me.
Google Gabe Kapler, Dodgers front office.
Yeah.
Just do that. Okay.
Yep.
Moving on. You're either a smart fella or a fart smella. Asking gut check. Place odds on Counsell's 2024. Your choices are number 1, not managing. Number 2, managing the Mets. Number 3, managing the Brewers. 4, none of the above. So, Paul, where are we now?
I'll put my money still on not managing. I think he is likely to take a year off. I think managing the Mets is now much, much, much more likely than it was given today's news. But I'll still put that second. And then I don't think he's going to be managing the Brewers next year. I just don't. I've heard opposites of that by some people, but I still don't think it's going to happen. He just looks so miserable. I think he's out one way or another.
It's just the way he looks.
Yeah, but he's always looked like that. I actually have come back around because I was the stalwart on this before the season started, saying I think he's going to be back, and I think he's going to be back. And then over the last couple of weeks, it seemed less and less likely that he was going to be back. And we talked about it in relation to, the things that were happening with, specifically with Brian Anderson. So that stuff. But at this point, I still think the most likely thing now, based on the reporting that John Heyman and I'm assuming Bob Nightingale, because they report all the same shit for the Mets, right? So, they think it's less likely that Craig Counsell's taking time off now, and they don't seem convinced that Counsell's coming to the Mets either. They really didn't think that was the case. Heyman was banging the drum for bringing Buck back, and Buck took that out of their hands by just stepping down.
Yep.
So the Mets clarified, no, he was fired.
Oh, did they?
Yes. So that's David Stern's first fun press conference on Monday is handling that PR mess anyway.
Interesting. Okay. So, but at any rate, they seemed less convinced that Counsell was doing that. My thinking at this point is that Counsell is holding Mark hostage to make him a really high paid manager, if not the highest paid manager in the game. That's what he's trying to do. So I'm going to go with that and say that the most likely outcome here is that he's back next year managing the Brewers. And then after that would be not managing the Mets. Those two are kind of that's tricky for me. I'll go with not managing, then managing the Mets as the lowest possible one on there. But yeah, ultimately, I think it's going to be hard for him to leave town. I think it's going to be difficult for him to do that, especially the deeper the Brewers go into this playoff run.
Make it interesting.
Yeah, I mean, if they really go on a run here, then I think that's it's going to go a long ways towards convincing him he just needs to keep going with the Brewers. So I'm back on board with Craig sticking around. Hopefully that's not just blind optimism, but I'm back on board with that.
Well, hey, your blind optimism led you to pick the Brewers to win the NL Central, and you're the only one of us three who did that at the start of the year. So
that's true.
Who knows?
And do you remember who I picked to win the World Series?
I do. Do you want to remind the folks who you picked?
Yeah, I picked the Brewers. It was a moment of wild abandon, we'll say, where I was just like, screw it. We'll just pick
Hope
the Brewers
springs eternity, as Uke says, in the spring. Ryan picked the Brewers over the Rays, and then Rob Manfred's eyes melt out of his face.
Right.
I don't know.
Yeah, exactly. That's the Rob Manfred Maylocks World Series outcome. Like, he'll just be sitting there. Yeah.
Yeah. If the Brewers make the World Series, get ready for Fox to just speculate for 7 games on if he's going to the Mets. Yep. That'd be fun.
Yeah, but I mean, if that is the case, like, if the Brewers are playing in the World Series this year, Paul, if the Brewers play in the World Series, if the Brewers win the World Series this year, does Craig Counsell leave?
Yeah.
Is it a swan song, or is it incentivize you to come back and play for a dynasty? I don't know. I think he might swan song that for a year and then leverage it into a giant, huge contract like a couple of years down the line.
With us or elsewhere?
Ooh, whoever highest bidder.
Elsewhere. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
so
we'll
you're still on the record as thinking that. And James, what's your take here? Then are you thinking he's gone?
If they win the World Series, I think he's gone. Nothing else to accomplish for his childhood team.
Yeah.
There is
going on top as the all-time best and leave.
Yeah. I mean, there's a certain going out on top aspect to that.
Yep.
But he's also not like an old man, and I think he could manage for another 20 years, though maybe that would lead to serious health problems if the look of stress on his face is truly. Some people just look more stressed than they actually are. So hopefully we hope for his health's sake that, like,
as one of those people, I can attest that is true. But also I
have resting stress face.
I do, and I also have very high blood pressure. Those two may be related. I don't know. Who's to say? All right, that'll do it for questions this week. Thanks, everybody. For those, a reminder, patreon.com/MKE tailgate, $2 a month gets your question answered here and on the Packers Reporting as Eligible podcast. New patrons also get a shout out here. Ryan, who do we have joining the group this week?
We have Richard Proctor and Tom Haight.
All right. Well, thank you for signing up or re-signing up if you've been here before. A reminder, you can always, come back if you are a past patron or upgrade to the $5 level, whichever. But thanks, guys.
Welcome aboard, Proctor and Haight.
Proctor and Haight.
Good law firm.
Yeah, exactly.
That really does sound like a law firm. You're right.
All right. Well, reminder too, even if you're not a patron, go subscribe. Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you listen to us. You're definitely going to want to stay tuned for the playoff push. That'll do it for this week with our Wildcard series preview. I almost called it the NLDS. Hopefully we have the NLDS preview next week after the Brewers take care of business. But we will be back next weekend to recap what happened then and hopefully preview the next round of the playoffs. Go Brewers. Hope everything goes well. Have a good week, everyone. We'll see you next time.